So I want to thank the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library because this is such a great opportunity and what a great space. And they record and they, it's just, I'm just so appreciative. It's really fun to be here. And so anyway, check out their YouTube channel, subscribe to it because then you can look at other speakers. You can see Lisa, who presented a couple weeks ago, and Lisa Mannion, and Cynthia is going to be presenting in August. And we have to get Janice in here. We just have to get you all speaking in here is what really needs to happen. So anyhow, so we're talking about the womb tonight and as the foundation of the lost language of the feminine. So this is a huge topic, as you can see. I mean, sometimes we think there's no big deal. It's not a big deal. But it's about sacred geometry, universal rhythms, internal navigational system, that's what it is for women. It's the science of the hormonal sequence. It's the journey of the egg. It's the journey of the female. It's about your rhythmic, it gives you a rhythmic sex drive, females. It's about self-care and attention. It's about sacrifices and compromises. It's the human garden of creation. It's a sacred vessel. It's a training ground. It's sacred medicine. There's fertility concern, one way or the other.
You just clicked your thing.
Oh, I sure did. Oh, don't go anywhere yet. I wonder if I just took too long. It's about life and death. It's about bonding. It's about ancestral healing. It's about women's history. It's about societal consciousness or pressure. It's about politics and busybodies. It's about feminine power. It's about the future. So that's a lot. And so for tonight, we're not going to talk about all those things, but we are going to talk about some of them. Whoop. All right. And it's back.
Is it doing?
No, it's fine. So this is what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to, you're going to hear from me, my message, my story. We're going to talk about the lost language, universal and body rhythms. We'll have questions at the end, like Billy talked about. We'll talk about negative programming. We'll talk about who is 4 seasons and 4 weeks for. We'll talk about how to track with it. 4S4W is 4 seasons and 4 weeks. Talk about going forward. Whoa, I put those in today and they just went faster and I didn't know how to fix it. So we'll talk about the method, sacred geometry, and the takeover of the feminine. All right, so here's me. And I've got to go over my story with you. I wasn't even going to do this, but then I realized that without telling you this whole story, it's just the better foundation for it. So I'm a womb wisdom educator here to share with you a system for understanding the monthly hormones that was revealed to me back in the late 1990s and that I've now been practicing and unraveling for almost 25 years. It also showed me that what complete feminine energy empowerment is and what I believe to be the secret to our moving forward. Here we go. This is the message that changed everything. So to this day, and I apologize for actually reading through this section of this, but believe me, it's just easier this way. So to this day, I still don't know how to explain what happened. And I guess I would say I had an epiphany about the female hormones and quite a bit more. Up until the moment of clarity, I wasn't into the hormones at all. My thing was, and still is, female equality, so that women, their families, and thereby the world may thrive well. I had always been an advocate for a woman's right to happiness and loved inspiring stories of the brave heroines who came before me, whether they were stepping up and speaking out or facing another day of doing their best to love 9 kids when they really only wanted 2. I hear a lot of stories, and that's a story that I heard. I'm passionate about compassion for females. At the time of the insight, even though I was a hippie mom, tree-hugging nature nerd with an entrepreneurial spirit and who loved deep intellectual conversations and personal sharings and had birthed 3 kids at home and loved everything natural, I was not into the language of the hormones or period talk. It just made me squirm. That was just not my thing. I come from a generation that Ray and I, can I say that, Ray? Ray and I were just talking about that we turned 66 this year. Shh. Yeah. Secret's out. So I come from a generation that grew up in the 60s when our hormonal design was used against our gender at home, in public, on television, and in the workplace. As a little girl and then a teen, I was greatly affected by it. It was painful to hear the ongoing and common derogatory comments being made to and about women, all ultimately pointing to their hormones as the scientific reason for not putting women into high-paying careers and the excuse to treat them as silly and incapable. Female doctors didn't exist when I was a kid, or at least I didn't know any. Women drivers were the butt of jokes throughout my childhood. The whole scene was humiliating. Every bit of it was wrong, yet too overpowering to change. Instead, I rejected any idea that my hormones had anything to do with what made me tick. Those conversations were laced with disempowering information and insulting insinuations. Certainly, I knew the general science of the hormones, and I circled the first day of my period on my calendar every month. I never had any serious trouble with my cycle that I knew of, which was a regular 28-day event, except that I was chronically stressed about contraception and preventing pregnancy. If I had known then what I know now, I would have recognized that my subtle fluctuations actually meant something useful. I would have understood my sex drive and learned how to enjoy different types of intimacy as my desires naturally changed throughout the month, rather than berating myself for sometimes wanting my partner and sometimes not. I would have recognized my overly enthusiastic light as well as my depressing darkness, rather than questioning myself all the time. It wasn't until I was a little over 40 years old with a husband, 3 kids, and a high-end business with 30 employees that I found myself making inconsistent decisions. I decided to track my physical energy and viewpoint to see if I could gain some insight, and that intention would prove to be an understatement. So I began jotting down notes in my day planner each day. It was around 1998. A couple of months later, while eating lunch, I was casually looking back over what I had written, and then it just happened.
Your hair is covering.
Oh, is it? Thank you.
It should work down. Point it this way. You should be able to get to the slide.
Okay, I'm going to...
Point it this way.
Oh, point it that way? Oh, look at that.
Keep going. It's not going to play automatically.
Oh, good. Okay, excellent.
Ray fixed it.
Yay, Ray.
Mouse came back to life.
Okay. So here, then it just happened. The words came with clarity and with big picture detail meaning. Fall, winter, spring, and summer hovered over my day planner. I'm not kidding. So in a flash of insight, a nanosecond, an ancient and indestructible system of sacred biology and universal geometry was passed on to me. And I am not kidding about this. I was shown 4 distinguishable weeks that blend together beautifully, each one highly important for setting the stage for the next. I was shown how each individual day of the entire month matters and how mindful decision-making is everything for creating the best life experience possible. It was as if the curtain was pulled back for me to witness a perfectly working female ecosystem in action, a multi-layered network that runs my and your entire existence and is also interconnected with our past, present, and future endeavors. I was shown the sophisticated pattern of a rhythm I didn't even know I had or tried to ignore. Still, I wanted to know what was going on. Where was this information coming from? Now, I've always had a decent mind for math, mainly seeing patterns easily. So it's possible that this time, when looking over my notes, my brain just simply caught a portal into a vastly more intricate pattern and brought the puzzle pieces together all at once, or perhaps finally back together where they once belonged. However, while that may be right, it also felt bigger and deeper than that, as if something else was involved. It felt as though the genetic memory of my lineage came forth, my greatest grandmothers who understood the medicine of the womb and the power and beauty of the feminine. Was their knowing so strong that their teachings lived through the generational DNA and left me a clear formula to discover? Did their imprint step in to guide me, to push me forward and have my back to represent all that they knew to keep the sacred ways alive? This big picture view made it clear that our female hormonal sequence is about a whole lot more than physical health or making babies. It is the wisdom of the ages and the stories of time informing our emotional intelligence and leadership capabilities. It is the foundation of brilliance supporting our every move as individual women and also as a team. We are a vital force of nature that needs to recognize who the powerful feminine is and how she functions for the betterment of the planet. It was so clear that this system is not only something we haven't been taught, but it's something we've been denied the knowledge of. The denial goes back far enough that it's hard to pinpoint the origin. It took place in different places at different times over different time periods. So what we're really talking about is the denial of our power by denying us information about how our bodies actually work, as well as what we've been naturally appointed to be in charge of. This disallowance has gone on for so long that we now live an entirely different existence, an alternate universe of confusion and stupidity about our own bodies and minds and what we deserve. Even though the ecosystem I witnessed, the natural rhythm of the universe runs flawlessly in the background. It's ongoing anyway, in spite of us, with or without us. So this hormonal sequence is the path we travel each month. It's a pilgrimage to our higher selves. Each day is a portal into the profoundly sacred teachings. Our wombs are the source of human creation, the well of creation knowledge. It is womb wisdom, the universal mother mind at any age, the sacred feminine. We all have access to it, whether we ever have or want children. It's about leading our lives, circles, and global communities with well-rounded reason and foresight. The world needs for us to step up and speak from this balancing place. Our hormonal journey leads with the physical. It pokes and prods in radical execution. Blood, cramps, tender nipples, sexual intoxication. Yeah, I'm going to say all these things over and over because that's our lives. Rage, peace, and love beyond measure. It's got hurricane conditions and the calm before the storm all mixed into 1 month to get us to pay attention, to listen, to learn. It's touchable. We can tap into this well of knowledge and reclaim the power that's ours. While the female biosphere is woven into the complex fabric of all life, the method for aligning with our own is beyond easy to implement. I immediately tested out the system by mapping it out on my calendar. After tracking my cycle in the new way for only 2 months, I couldn't deny the incredible accuracy of this thing. I loved knowing what day I was on and what it meant, and knowing my deliberate actions would pay off. It was crazy, and like I said, I was not into the hormones. I just wasn't one of those girls. For the first time in my life, I understood that my hormones were streaming information and offering me not only an exhilarating adventure, but a far richer way to live life, a way that invites my higher self to step in and run the show more often. I've continued to track each day ever since, even though I'm past menopause, and I'll explain how that works later, okay? Still, I didn't tell anyone about it for years, not even my husband, because I was trying to wrap my head around what had happened and whether I would accept the assignment to speak about it. The message had more to it than just tracking the hormones differently. It meant changing the entire conversation about female hormones and why they and the womb are such a challenge to society, which felt way too big, way too daunting, and way too scary. And I did not want to be the poster girl for, the female cycle. That just wasn't my jam at the time. But it was too scary and too big. It was a larger sermon than I thought it could deliver. It was a message that contained an eternal truth to teach and a criminally false narrative to dispel. Yet I knew it was a hidden jewel of justice and clarity, a lost language that needs to be spoken. As much as I struggled, this was not mine to hang on to. I knew too much now to bail on the message, and every cell in my body sensed that the ancestors were counting on me to deliver it to our current gender collective as well as future generations. I was handed a purpose. I accepted with honor. After 7 years of writing it, the book 4 Seasons in 4 Weeks was born in 2012. So I tracked for 7 years before talking about it, and then it took 7 years to write the book. I really thought it would take a couple months, and it just the insights kept coming. It was, I can't explain it, but it's true. It has helped countless women and couples worldwide and is resonating more today than ever. And so that's why I'm talking here tonight. Okay, so the lost language of the feminine is about sovereignty. Now, when the U.S. was legally founded in 1776, women could not vote, could not own property. Any money they made belonged to their husbands, and husbands could legally beat their disobedient wives.
Rape them.
What's that?
And rape them.
And rape them, yeah. But the one thing women had control over was their reproductive bodies, because men didn't want to have anything to do with that nonsense. You know, periods, pregnancy, birthing, like, I don't want to touch that. That was actually a pretty good deal, actually. So the women had that. That's what they had. Until the mid-1800s, the unthinkable happened in the United States. It happened in other countries at other different places in time, but I'm speaking to the history that's most familiar to me. Midwifery was outlawed, and women's reproductive health was taken over by the newly formed patriarchal AMA, American Medical Association. The result was medieval. Menstruation was considered an embarrassment and a weakness, as well as negligence towards your husband and domestic duties, and worse, a disrupting mental illness. Childbirth practices were created to be convenient for the male doctors in hospitals. Eventually, nursing one's baby was seen as obscene or low class. Our ancestors had it rough. Now, at that same time, around the mid-1800s, some women were able to own some property, but it was like the swap happened, that women were starting to get a few more privileges of what they could own, but then they got that taken away. So once that was taken away, so with women silenced by shame and no longer gathering for the purpose of passing along their language of the feminine ways and womb care traditions, females became isolated and the language was lost. They depended on each other. Between the midwives and the aunties and the sisters and the neighbors, the women took care of it. Okay. So the marriage of male-dominating medicine practices and conservative religion as a hospital business model on top of outlawing midwifery ensured that the feminine would not only lose her language, but her voice altogether in regard to her womb care, family planning desires, birthing choices, and personal future. So lost power of the feminine equals lost language of the womb, and vice versa. You see, if cultures can disconnect women from their wombs by shaming them about their cycles, their sexuality, and their family planning decisions, it is easy to control not only females, but the entire population. So I'm going to talk about this for just a second. So colonization is the action or process of settling among and establishing control over the indigenous people of an area. And colonialism is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. The feminine fits in there somewhere. You know, it's kind of a combo of both. I believe the takeover of the female gender is a form of ownership, fitting into both of these definitions. And these are systems where a culture of people lose their say over decisions made about them, is really kind of how it shakes out. If you're a woman of color, forget it, you're doubly screwed. So this is a quote from a Hawaiian. What's the best way to dismantle a culture, the honor and the sovereignty of the people? Take their language. And so Jimmy Carter says, the truth is that male religious leaders have had and still have an option to interpret holy teachings either to exalt or subjugate women. They have, for their own selfish ends, overwhelmingly chosen the latter. Their continuing choice provides the foundation or justification for much of the pervasive persecution and abuse of women throughout the world. God bless Jimmy Carter and his journey right now. Female womb intelligence and care traditions were quickly identified as quackery or witchcraft. and were omitted from reproductive information and medical training. It also meant that female traditions and experiences were wiped clean from educational curriculums when the time came to teach sex education. This is important. So the lost language of the feminine is about a missing half. So if you were lucky enough to be in at least one good sex education class, then what you learned in that class was the science of the female hormones. You were shown and taught about an approximate 28-day sequence that looks like this. The problem here is that only the technical sequence and biology of the hormones are taught in most. The problem here is that that's what's taught in most schools, online, and at doctors' offices. Now, you want to know, well, what's wrong with that? Certainly nothing's wrong with that. You see technical sex education, you all say that, repeat after me, focuses primarily on the story of the egg. This is an important thing here, explaining the triggering mechanisms that cause fertility and what happens next if that fertility happens or doesn't happen. While it's accurate, important, and amazing, it's just not the whole story. However, so the egg's journey is half the story. And guess who has the other half that we don't talk about? So while the egg's journey is technical, the egg carrier's experience is non-technical. So here's what I mean by that. If I tell you that, okay, I'm in the follicular phase, I don't care how well educated you are, unless you're somebody who's tracking every day, or you're a doctor that's in it all the time. You have to, I see eyeballs roll back about, the follicular phase. You're trying to access that, right? Well, that's because the egg is going through the follicular phase, but the women are not folliculating. We're not walking around doing that. We are having an entirely different experience, and we'll get into that in winter week 2 when we get there. And we'll talk about the female experience of that. But nobody's thinking about follicles at that moment. Or they might be, but in a different way. So the problem with only teaching the technical is that it leaves the female's experience up to society's biases and stories made up. Whoop. Sorry, hang on a minute here. So ignoring, overlooking, or leaving out the experience of females throughout the entire reproductive journey, as well as the societal judging of the cycle as negative, and the derogatory name-calling terms assigned to women because of their reproductive decisions, are damaging contributors to females loathing their cycles and bodies. Women are going through huge bouts of anxiety every day today with so much stuff going on. These are just a few of the terms, but there's a lot of them. I know a bunch of years ago, this guy created a threat monitor app so that he could know when his wife was going to be a threat and to stay away, So after leaving the female's voice out of education gives permission to leave the female's voice So when we leave the female's voice out of education, it gives permission to leave the female's voice out when speaking about contraception, pregnancy, and all the rest that we're facing today. The entire focus is on the egg, the embryo, and the fetus, while you, the medicine carrier of the whole operation, are left out of the conversation or disregarded while these topics are tossed around in political arenas or over dinner as if your womb and personal self are public property to be bartered over, decided on, and traded out for political or religious gain. It's a sanctioned form of trafficking. Your right to make decisions about the very thing you are in charge of stewarding, your body and specifically the womb, is being bought and sold by leaders and voters while your objections are not considered. And it continues to point back to a deep societal sexism, a fundamental collective psyche sewn into the population that not only are women morally wrong and not capable of sound judgment, but it's unacceptable for women to take a superior or leading role in society, even about her own body. So the perverted desire to keep women in their place is, in my opinion, a big part of what this whole mess is about. Whoop. There we go. Post-traumatic stress syndrome does not only happen in war, it happens with women in everyday life. So here's the thing. While our women's history is littered with cruel injustices that are important to understand in order to heal the ancestral wounds within us, give gratitude for the sacrifices made toward the freedoms we have today, have a foundational knowledge of why we still don't have equal respect, and hold strong boundaries for how we want to be treated, it is important to not keep our energies in the negative narrative, but rather focus on standing tall, knowing the truth of who we are, being clear that no one can take our power, expecting to be treated well, and building a new model. Whoop. Oh, well, I guess that's okay. Let's go ahead and just step through the portal here of the female experience. This is the other half. This is the female's journey. Okay, so the lost language begins with natural rhythms. Now, sacred geometry of rhythms. Pretty much every rhythm in the universe has something that looks like resting, building, expressing, and deconstructing. If you take a look at the 24-hour circadian rhythm, what you're going to see is resting, building, expressing, and deconstructing. When we sleep at night, that's a resting phase. When we get up in the morning and get ready for the day, that's a building phase. When we hit our stride in the middle of the day, that is a expressing phase. And then we get tired at some point, and that's a deconstructing phase, and it's back to rest. In the 24-hour rhythm, we may do that a couple of times during the day, but that's an ongoing rhythm. This is just going on its own now at this point, right? Yeah. Research also shows that the female hormonal sequence mimics one complete moon orbit around the Earth, and we experience the moon as an absence of light, a building of light. It might just be something I didn't see when I created it. Anyway, you know, we've got new moon, eventually waxing moon, full moon, waning moon. So those are all different phases, and that's resting, building, expressing, and deconstructing. Okay? There we go. Just like I said. So while I had always understood that my cycle mimicked the moon, I was shown how my monthly cycle also holds the pattern of the 4 seasons and the behavior of the solstices and the equinoxes.
It says it's paused.
Oh, good. Oh, okay. That's fine, right? For where it is right now is fine. Oh, well, that's fine too. Fall, winter, spring, and summer also have those same 4 energies due to the building or declining in sunlight. But in addition, each season also has very distinct characteristics that the 4 phases of the female hormonal sequence seem to share, which make the hormones easy to relate to when we think about those characteristics of the seasons. Okay, this guy's got to stop here for a second. Stop getting ahead of me. So here's the thing that I want you to think about, is that when we're talking seasons, we often think about how we grew up and what holidays we were doing, what sports we were playing, all that kind of stuff. Nature doesn't care about any of that stuff. Primal rhythms don't care about any of that stuff. They keep going. Even right now, as climate change is doing all its stuff, the sun is coming out every day, out in full force or behind clouds or whatever, and so is the moon. The equinoxes are still, and solstices are still happening right now. So if we wiped out human holidays and got rid of artificial lighting, we'd experience autumn as the time we get super sleepy. People want to say it's winter. It is not winter. The autumn equinox, it's as if somebody turns the light out. And all of a sudden, it gets dark early. All of a sudden, it starts getting dark early, and everybody starts talking about how tired they are early in the evening. And it goes deeper into the darkness. But it's the time when really we're so active, but I question the wisdom of that. I have my own philosophy, hypothesis, I guess, that if we weren't so busy running around after it, or in November and December, preparing, doing all the holidays, that's also called flu season. Maybe if we were sleeping through all of that, we wouldn't have flu season, It's just a thought. So anyway, but that's too big to take on. I'm sure not going to be the one that tells everybody to switch what they're doing. But I think that, I just think that how we work and how we do send the kids to school, the hours could be looked at per season and adjusted for health and well-being. So anyway, the fall equinox triggers the deepening into darkness and rest. The winter solstice, even though that day is the darkest day, it celebrates the return of the light, and the building of light. And then the spring equinox takes us into the height of light and its fullest expression. And then summer solstice is, even though that's the longest day of the year, that's the switch that starts going darker again. That's the flip around point. So it's actually taken us back into the darkness. Oop. Okay. So anyway, the ancient lunar rhythmic
design of your feet.
Woo! I'm taking that thing out right now. That's in a master class that I have, that I pulled that off of. Thought I found all of those. So anyway, the the ancient lunar rhythmic design of your female body, mind, and
Lunar rhythmic.
what? That is just all right. All right. So the ancient lunar rhythmic design of your female body, mind, and essence supports your endeavors when you flow with it rather than against it. Okay? And Brian, I've got something for you here tonight too. So men seem to be, here we go.
The ancient.
There we go. Men seem to be dominantly solar rhythmic and have 4 seasons in a year, but their own 4 seasons. So I want to talk about that for just a second. So hopefully this won't go flying ahead here. Because, we're all lunar and solar rhythmic. All of us are that. But women seem to be more dominantly lunar rhythmic because of this womb blueprint that we have. Men seem to be dominantly solar rhythmic because of their steady sexual burn, basically, that goes on. And then from talking to some different researchers and this pharmacist who was way into this idea, we had talked about, it was actually a young man who brought me this idea. He said, yeah, I've got 4 seasons in a year in that we started talking about resting, building, expressing, deconstructing. And so it might not be fall, winter, spring, and summer. He'll do 3 months of that resting phase, 3 months of that building phase, 3 months of that expressing phase, and 3 months of that deconstructing phase. So let's take a business, for example. So in that resting phase, you may just be thinking about what a business that, you're kind of throwing around the ideas and planning that out for like 3 months. But you're a little worried that you're not being quite as active as you normally feel like you should be. And then the next 3 months, all of a sudden you get active and you're putting all those plans into action. And then the next 3 months, you open the business or you do whatever it is. And then the next 3 months, everything goes to hell and something happened and things aren't going as well. But then when you start realizing which phase you're in, you actually can bring tools into existence and actually even everything out. Once you have certain tools, and we'll talk about that. It's really more self-care tools. Let's just say this for now. For women, any of the tools that you might have would be something like essential oils or good music that lifts you. If you're going through sort of a depressive stage, do you dive into it a little more deeply and cry a lot? That's what I would, I'll do that sometimes. If I feel like I'm depressed, but I just really need to cry it out. I'll put on Legends of the Fall for the 50th time and cry through the whole thing, you know, and then I'm good, you know, or I'm going to lift myself out of it, and I've got other tools for that. I put on music that I know that I love, but I've got those tools right there to access, because otherwise you won't access them, because the depression or your sadness or whatever it is feels real. And it is real, but you think it's going to last forever, and it doesn't have to last forever. You'll start seeing that you've got these tools that you can use every day. All right, so anyhow, we humans are well versed in the seasons, and therefore there are more characteristics to compare our monthly hormonal experience with. And this is why I say we have 4 seasons in 4 weeks, but ultimately the moon's orbit, the lunar rhythm, is the galactic rhythm and the time frame that the female hormones actually mimic, okay? So symbolically, use whatever's easier for you to relate to. The 4 energies are the same, whether they're compared or described as the seasons, moon phases, or characteristics. It doesn't really matter. You're traveling through 4 different lands, basically, okay? Okay, so understanding your cycle is as easy as the 4 seasons. Science and nature show us the rhythmic pattern of the female hormones. 4 seasons in 4 weeks shows you the relevancy of that science to your daily experiences. That's the difference. Okay, so Danielle from Arizona says, I'm not exaggerating when I say this book changed my life and helped save my relationship. A friend of mine recommended this book, and once I dove in, I was transformed. I also love the common language it's given me and my husband, and I use this information with my daughter. So a lot of what this book does also does talk about the rhythmic sex drive. And when I've done workshops with couples, the men are so happy to learn this information, you know, because it's actually, it's these 4 phases. Who knew? And because our bodies are going through 4 different energies through these 4 weeks, we respond differently. Women like sex just as much as men, but it has to be, it's different, it changes. And so if we're getting the same sort of touch all the time, that doesn't really work, and we don't know why. We didn't know why. But once you get in, and when both of you know, if you follow the female, then everybody's happy. So the lost language is about inclusion. So before we go through the 4 seasonal phases, let's talk about who this is for so that you know how to apply your situation. While the 4 seasons and 4 weeks method best serves the reproductive, naturally cycling female, it also greatly benefits those who bleed no more and those who have never bled, such as girls and trans women. So your lunar rhythmic body clock continues to tick. The remarkable qualities of the womb are vast and embedded. They do not disappear when you stop bleeding at menopause or hysterectomy. It means you can no longer bear children, but the imprint and the patterns remain, but usually in a much freer and more powerful way and more subtle way. Okay. So 4 seasons in 4 weeks is for naturally cycling, reproductive age females first and foremost. They're the ones that are doing the blueprint right now, have the blueprint happening. Females on cycle reducing contraception, but your experience will be compromised a little bit. Perimenopausal women, it's unpredictable. It's this horror show section that can be all over the place, but when you practice this, it can really help it. No longer bleeding, post-hysterectomy, post-menopausal women, everything's just more mellow. And I'm showing you this now because when I go through the 4 phases, then you'll know whether it applies to you or not. So those who have never bled but gender transition to female, so they're on hormones, they're on female hormones, okay? So it's a little milder, and they haven't experienced the having a womb, but they've got the energy going, the rhythm going, the lunar rhythm going. Somebody who identifies as male, but not on male hormones, so they still bleed. And then girls, so 4 seasons and 4 weeks tracking can begin in girlhood to prepare the girls for womanhood. So if I say that if you start like with a 5-year-old girl and you start tracking by the moon. What we've got is tracking by the body, somebody's own personal rhythm, or we're tracking by the moon. So we're talking post-hysterectomy, post-menopause, girls, trans women are tracking specifically by the moon. When it is the new moon, that's your resting phase. And then on and on from there. If you've got your own cycle going, you've got your own moon phase going on in here. So you start with the first day of your period is your resting phase or your new moon phase. Unless you've discovered otherwise as time goes on. But I say try this for a while. I say try this for like 3 months before you decide it's, because you might just have some habits that you've gotten into. But if the girls start tracking at that point, then you're showing them how to just, oh, what's your energy like today? You're just doing energies, you know, and but you're showing them the moon. You're teaching them to track in 4 phases. And so by the time that blood giver knocks on their door, then they're used to, they've got an idea of how to track. 4 seasons and 4 weeks will help you at work, school, and in relationships. At work or school, outside or inside the home, just schedule your calendar. That's what I did when I first learned about this. Again, I had this big business and I started scheduling everything around it, and it was amazing. It was sort of crazy. So women entrepreneurs just wear all the hats and stay above water. Athletes, so know your peak performance times and how to best prepare when you have an event during a low hormonal fuel time. And couples, follow the female's rhythmic sex drive for maximum connection and satisfaction for both of you. If there's 2 women, then you have to know the phase that the other one is in for a better connection. I want to talk about just the athlete thing for a second. So athletes, here's what can happen, is life does not change for our cycles, no matter how much we would like for it to. So we have to, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I think some things should change, don't get me wrong, but there's things that we can do personally. So if you've got a marathon to run and it's falling when you're on your period, you've got to treat yourself in an entirely different way. You've got to sleep like crazy. You do not go out for pizza and beer after that race is over with. You've got to rest during this time. You've got to fuel differently. You've got to nourish yourself really differently. But you can still do it. You're not disabled unless there is something truly wrong. Now, however, if you do that marathon between the 3rd and 4th week, you are going to kick ass and you are going to win. And you know it, and you should take advantage of that. You have different fuel. You're receiving different amounts of fuel every week. It's different. And when you know what day, when you get up in the morning, you know what week you're in, what day you're on, and you know what that means, then you're going to make decisions based on that day. Okay, so finally, we've got licensed professionals who can help their clients. So doctors, practitioners, nutritionists assist your patients in their rhythmic body care. Coaches and fitness gurus assist your female athletes in caring for their body during peak and non-peak performance times. Mental health, deal with depression, for instance, rhythmically. And sex therapists, relationship coaches teach the female rhythmic sex drive for harmony and satisfaction for both parties. I'm telling you, Tantra is still not as good unless you can get into this foundational piece of understanding this rhythm, you know. So it's for all people who have a desire to align more fully with their powerful feminine, or they're open to understanding how to get there by way of the female cycle blueprint, their lunar rhythm body. The Lost Language has a method, which is 4 seasons and 4 weeks. So we have to go over the cycle sequence just to refamiliarize everybody with it. Each month, the reproductive age female builds a uterine lining and matures eggs so that one egg has a chance to be fertilized at ovulation. Each month, we already did that. If the egg is fertilized by a sperm at ovulation, the cluster of egg and sperm DNA has to travel for approximately 6 to 10 days to reach the uterine lining. I'm showing you this so that you know where I'm at when I'm going through the 4 phases. If the cluster of DNA does make it to the uterine wall, it will attempt to embed itself into the uterine lining. So HCG is the hormone that causes your pregnancy test. Oh, I missed a little spot here. Oh, so if the egg and sperm's DNA successfully, where am I, sorry? Successfully embeds into the uterine lining, then the HCG hormone is released into the bloodstream, announcing a pregnancy to your body. That is the hormone that shows up in your blood test, your P test, right? But it can take a while to get to your blood, or it can take a while to get to your urine. So a blood test would show whether you're pregnant earlier, but you have to wait a little while for that pregnancy test to show whether you're pregnant or not. All right, so finally, if the egg is not fertilized, this will be detected anywhere from 6 to 10 days after ovulation. And at this point, the uterine lining is not needed and has to break down to be flushed out in the form of blood, the period. Okay? So, here we go. And I'm hoping that this will stay put, because I'm going to get over here now. All right, so let's do this thing. All right, so here we are. The period, fall, week 1. Again, why do I call this fall? For a few reasons. One, we can see, oh,
Okay. Huh.
I don't want that yet.
Hang on. So why is that one changing and the other ones aren't?
It was probably something I did with, like, didn't get a timing thing right or something.
Okay, well, I'll come back to it.
Okay. All right, so here's the deal. We call this, for all you women in here, you know that throughout your whole reproductive age period times, the doctor is asking you what's the first day of your period. Okay, we count that as day 1, but this week, I don't want that. Oh.
I'll go back to it.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what happens. We call this day 1. We call this the first week, but it's actually the last week, because this is the end of your former uterine lining. Really, you really start building here. Here, this is tearing down the uterine lining from before. So what happens here is one of the reasons why it aligns with fall really well is that fall is the last phase of the growing season. That's when we harvest everything. Leaves start falling, red leaves start falling, okay? So this is really the last phase of the former uterine lining. But the reason why we call it week 1 and day 1 and that kind of thing is because it's just easier to calculate. It's easier for everybody to calculate pregnancy. It's a marker. You get that blood, it's a marker. And so it makes sense to do that. But just remember that this isn't really the first week of this whole new cycle. This is the last week of that one, okay? Your hormones are at their lowest right here. So it's just, you need to lay low. This is the resting phase. This is a really powerful time, and I know that that's a lot of blah, blah, blah around that, but if you compare it to fall, you're also going through that phase of the weather, kind of wherever you are. There's Samhain or Halloween happens to be in there also, but there's something about it where the veils are thin. Like I tell women to look at the blood, think about your bloodline. Who's in your DNA? What gifts do you have? Who's come forward? I'm sure that you probably feel the same if you have siblings. I have 2 other siblings, and we are nothing alike. Everybody's got a different DNA cocktail in there, I'm sure of it, and you can kind of pick out who's got which ancestors in them, We laugh about that sometimes. I think I got all the, I must have gotten all the witchy ones, and I'm good with that. So anyway, sexually, this is a time when it's just, as far as a relationship goes, this is a time to just be super sweet with each other. If your partner needs to make dinner, get a movie, keep things chill in the house. If you've got kids, tell them to make their own peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for dinner. They're actually happy to do it. You have to take some power here. The number one thing I hear from women when it comes to this sort of thing is, I don't have time to rest. And I'm going to tell you right now, you do not have time to not rest, because it will screw up your whole month and it'll screw up the rest of your year. You have to find the time What that means is you don't go, again, kind of like not going out for pizza and beer after the marathon, you don't go on the extra errand in the afternoon. You might get a little bit of a second wind. Do not do it. You have to start forcing yourself to lay low and let the people around you do stuff. Women are notorious, I was always this way, for having to keep doing everything. And, you know, like, or even thinking that, well, if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. But you know what is, when you tell them this is my resting week, they start jumping in there. Like, everybody's actually more capable. Like, my kids ended up being a lot more capable than I gave them credit for. So, anyhow, this is week 1. Okay, so sexually, it's time to be sweet and that kind of thing. Whether you have intercourse or not is totally up to the two people. Blood's involved. You have to talk about it, but you just don't want to get crazy or anything. But, you know, that part's up to you. Next, we go to winter. It's hot.
So this is the first day of the period and that week.
This week.
Okay.
So you take the approximate 28 days.
Right.
Everybody's a little, let's just take 28 days just to make it easy. Break it into 4 guided weeks. You've got resting, building, expressing, deconstructing. And it maps out perfectly. Right here. Whoop. Right here. Resting. This is the lowest right here. So again, just lay low. So take 7 weeks or 7 days and rest a lot. Again, you can go to work, you can do that stuff, but totally play it differently, you know? And stick up for yourself and just say, no, I'm not going to go out after work or anything like that. Go home and just take care of yourself. Because I'm telling you, like I said, it will mess you up throughout the week or throughout the month if you don't rest. And you'll start discovering that the more and more you do this. This is an everyday tracking system. It's really easy to do. You're just marking it down. I say do it on manual. You do it on paper for the first 3 months. And Cynthia and I developed an app for it, but we haven't. It's really expensive to do it. We haven't gotten it out there yet. But
it's cool. And this is, the first day is also the first day of the new moon, right?
first day of the new moon, right? So for if you are no longer cycling or whatever, it's the first day of the new moon. Correct. Once you start getting the hang of it, you could scooch things around a little bit if you wanted to start a few days before the new moon and make your days a little bit different. But you want to do 7 days each, basically. And so this would be the time that you're planning, making your best plans. This is when you're going to get your best visions. I'm not kidding. Take it easy. You'll start after that. Once you allow all that stuff to happen, you'll start feeling a little more artistic. And then all of a sudden you'll get to the end. Now, just if you get done with your period, you may not still be done resting. You can tell, you can feel it. It's like when you are sleeping, and let's say you've had a great night's sleep, and then it's time to get up, like you're ready to get up. You're ready to go and get a few things done. You don't want to go back to sleep. That's what this feels like right here. You can feel the surge of energy when you get here. And this is estrogen is going from 0 to 100 all in 1 week, in 7 days or so. This is the party girl drug, estrogen. Okay, so this is the week that you love everybody. You will overcommit. And what happens here, the reason why this can be a problem is because you don't think anything's happening. This is the week that you don't think anything's happening because you feel really good. And we're not used to that. We're used to feeling crummy a lot of the time. So when we're feeling good, we think that it has nothing to do with our hormones. We just feel good. But what it is estrogen is rising, and estrogen is your friend. So this is the week that you get things done, but you have to be careful. First of all, you're sexually intoxicated. You are heading towards ovulation. Your primal body is trying to attract a mate. And you're going to see somebody walk in that you just go, yeah, about when you need to take, this is when you go to a party. If you get invited to a party this week, you take a friend with you. And you take a friend that is not in this week, okay? Take a friend who's in this week, because this is a super balanced week, okay? But I'm telling you, this is the week that you will, and here's what else will happen. This is the week where somebody calls you on the phone, and they say, hey, we're going to go to the lake, and do you want to go? And you're thinking, yeah, hey, and guess what? And I'll make the sandwiches. I'll make all the sandwiches, and I'll bring the beverages, okay, and the cooler, okay? So just keep that in mind for a little bit later. But anyway, this is the week that you'll do that. Sexually, this is the time to go on dates. If you have a partner, I want one of you to ask the other on a real date, like a real for real date. You have heart-to-heart talks right here. You can do any of these things in any of the weeks, but this is the time your hormones are supporting you to do that. So because, again, you're trying to attract a mate, your heart is very open. So the heart-to-heart talks are important because you need that for your relationship bank account. You tell the person what you really like about them or love about them, you know, what you appreciate. You go and you play. You have to set time aside to go and do fun stuff together. You get really busy. I know, not only is I don't have time to sleep, I don't have time to rest, I don't have time to go out and play. I'm like the queen of this, right? Ask any of my friends. But it has to be done. You have to go and have fun because this is the time your body is supporting you the most for it. And with your partner, that is really, really important to do because relationships aren't always easy. And you want to have as good a stuff going on as you can, and this is the time to do it. This is the time to bring out your best romantic skills. This is like super romantic time. You're all cutesy and stuff and, you know, grossing out your friends because you're so cute and all that. But you're heading up to ovulation, right? All right, so sometimes somebody would sort of stop ovulation at the end of this week, but no, I put it at the beginning of this week for a reason. So what happens is that right as you hit this spot, now you're at the full moon, okay? Now the full moon is ovulation and the game is on. This is howling at the moon stuff. This is like go buy something weird at the sex store and try to figure out what it does, you know, and just have some laughs around it because this is the time to do that, right? You have one crazy night, and that'll carry you through. That one crazy night will carry you through to the next crazy night. So do that because it's really, really important. This is like the party. Over here, you planned the party. Over here, you picked up the phone and you got the food and the caterer and the decorations and stuff for the party. And now the party here, and you want to have a great time, okay? So your hormones are supporting you to do this. There's a book that was written by Dr. Rebecca Booth called The Venus Week. And she writes all about this. It's all about this week. Like, get in there and do it. Like, dress up, have fun, like, yeah, look in your closet and see what you haven't worn for a while that you like, and you wonder why you bought it, and maybe this is the week to wear it. But take a girlfriend with you. Take a friend with you. If you've got a partner, then good. Get your contraception in order if you do not want a pregnancy, because you just need to get in here and have fun with this week. Okay, so this week begins with ovulation, but ovulation is only a 24-hour period, basically. It can be, 12 to 36 hours or something, but you're looking at about 24 hours. So that egg drops, and afterwards, you can feel it. Oh, so by the way, in here, talking about contraception and all of that, sperm can sit in your body up to about a week, somewhere around 5 days. So if you've got some strong swimmers that are in there, they're just hanging out in your lounge, waiting for the queen to come down, and I swear I must have been an early ovulator because even though I was every 28 days, I think I was starting way over here because there's no explaining my 3 kids actually. So luckily I was wanting them and ready for that and all of that. But however, just know that you don't have to. If you're trying to get pregnant, you're probably working with somebody on that anyway. If you're having a little bit of trouble, but that sperm's going to sit in there. You don't have to wait till here. That sperm's going to sit in there and it's waiting. It's hanging out. Okay, ovulation happens, and I'm telling you, the next day you can feel it after you've ovulated. You don't want to count on this if you're really working with your fertility. But I'm telling you, you can feel it. It feels like the day after a party. You're all of a sudden exhausted. It's like, you woke up with your friends all over the living room, and somebody's making coffee, and then you just hang out and watch movies all day. That's what this day is like, and what I love about this week, or that day, the next couple of days, like right after ovulation. Right here. Okay, so anyway, here's the estrogen surge, and then the luteinizing hormone kicks off ovulation right here. So your hormones drop. Estrogen just nosedives. This one goes, but now progesterone's going up. But look at here. What you've got is this V, and I love this because that's the sign of the feminine. That's womb wisdom right here. This is the time to actually. This is such a great week. I love all these weeks. We could do a whole workshop on each one. This one I love because this is a really balanced time. So let's talk about just sexually. Let's talk about that for a second. So here, everything is still high up here. I mean, this all drops, but progesterone comes up, and progesterone is a feel-good drug also, but it's calmer. It's progestation. So it's like a nanny that wants to rock the uterine nest. It wants to it's putting a lot of blood into the uterine nest because its job is there to take care of a baby if it's coming. So progesterone is very calming. So progesterone is just super important. If you're not feeling good, I have a lot of women tell me, they don't feel good from here on out. I think what happens is that when you have that drop, and all of a sudden, you just feel kind of low, I think it's easy to just kind of get into that, but start feeling for your progesterone to come up, and you might need to check to see if you've got enough of it. But progesterone is a really nice, calming drug. So this week, sexually with your partner, this was the time for heart-to-heart talks. This is the time for mind-to-mind talks. What's going on with our money? Where are we living? What's going on with the kids or whatever? This is important, again, for your relationship again. And these conversations are good to have. This is a super balanced time to have these conversations. This is kind of a crazy time. Again, you're sexually intoxicated. Your partner's digging that, okay? This is good, but this is like normal sex. Okay, this one's more crazy sex. This one's just kind of normal sex, and it feels like, it's not as good because you're expecting this one all the time. But really, if you just know which phase you're in, it starts making sense to both of you. And there's something in there for both of you each time. This one is more of a world mother or world leader mode, because what happens is that primally, your body doesn't know if it's pregnant or not. You've got this whole week hanging out where you've got ovulation to the body either knowing it's pregnant or it's not pregnant. And it's a whole week of that. So in the meantime, here you are sort of just holding space, waiting for this pregnancy or not. You aren't, but that's what's going on primally inside of you. So you want to just take, so over here you went to the music festival, okay, at this one. Over here you're going to the symphony, right? Okay, you're a little more sophisticated with your partnership. Okay, so you get over here and your body figures out it's not pregnant. There's a time clock going on in there. When it figures out it's not, if it's pregnant, then progesterone keeps going, and anyway, progesterone's super happy. It's got the baby in there and everything, okay? But if there's no pregnancy, progesterone gets triggered, it has to drop. And the minute that progesterone starts to drop, right here, look at that. That is a lot of your feel-good drugs, 2 of them, tanking big time on this 4th week. I get rid of the idea of PMS. This is not a syndrome. This set of conditions are not a syndrome. Your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. You just don't know what to do with it. You feel like everybody's stupid. Over here, okay, here we go. So over here, what happens is that your friend calls you and says, you want to go to the lake? And you're like, I don't think I want to go to the lake. And they're going, oh, come on, and you made those great sandwiches before, and you're like, why doesn't somebody else ever make the sandwiches? Like, what is, like, I'm always making the sandwiches. I'm always bringing all the stuff. You guys are stupid. And no, I don't want to go to the lake. Or maybe I do, but, well, maybe okay, I'll make the sandwiches. But do you see what happened here? The problem isn't here. Party girl over here wasn't being mindful about, like being a little more careful. And you won't know that until you do this over and over for a few months. And all of a sudden you'll start seeing it and you're like, wow, that really happened. Okay? So over here, I call this the firewalk instead of PMS. It's doing exactly, but so now you're in ceremonial mode. You are focused. And you can tell when you're in it because it's the first time that you feel like that you want to sob at a time when sobbing wouldn't normally be happening. Like, why am I sobbing? Or road rage, or some behavior that's a little extreme for what you would normally, how you would normally react, right? I call those fireballs. And so I got really excited about, I learned to master this week, and I was so excited about it because all these things pop up over and over again. This whole thing repeats itself. It's a repeating pattern over and over and over. If you don't get it right this time, you're never going to get it all the way right because life is happening. But you start seeing all of these things happen in a remarkable way. And sure enough, you get a day into this one and you're feeling a fireball. It's a hot spot that you feel. And when that happens, it's time for you to, I just say, put on your headdress, start focusing ahead of you, and your job is to not throw fireballs at other people. But it's also to look at, it's kind of remarkable how many gifts will surface, will come to the surface. So if you, this is the way that I look at it. Okay, so this is fall. You're resting, building, expressing, and deconstructing. So you're looking as you go. Your partner, now, this is super important for partners. Right here, so you had your love fest in here. You've got your sophisticated mind-to-mind talks. You've worked stuff out. Let's say that, let's say your partner's he says, oh, I'm gonna totally clear out that corner of the garage, this week or something. So you're both making agreements. You're agreeing to stuff, and you get over here. Your job is to just stay focused on looking at the different things that are coming up that trigger you. You're kind of a mama bear right here. So if something's happening with the money, let's say there's some trauma that happens around the money, you are in survival mode here. You're in survival mode because this pregnancy did not get saved. Nobody's saving you here. You are in total survival mode here. And again, when I'm talking about pregnancies and that kind of thing, I'm talking about your primal body is here to serve. Your primal body is a machine. And if we need more people on the planet, then, it'll serve you. But it's up to you with your brain to decide how you're managing everything. So here, the pregnancy, there was no pregnancy. You're falling off the cliff. You're in survival mode. So your job is to look at what is triggering any anger that comes up for you. Because I'll tell you, whatever comes up for you, you don't need to do anything about it this week. But when you get back over here, you're going to take those things that you wrote down and you're going to contemplate them as you're resting. And then over here, you might make some new plans around that or be more mindful. Okay, so when you do this over and over and over, it's kind of crazy accurate. So when you're in here and you, when you're going forward, your job is just to mind your own business, look at things that are coming up for you. Your partner's job is to clean out the frickin' corner of the garage that he said he was going to do, because that will make things great. If he doesn't, after he promised that, that's part of the issues that you're going through, right? So this works both ways. Your partner can be writing things down all along too to bring up during the heart-to-hearts and the mind-to-minds, right? So this is how, as a couple, you work together on this. but your body is supporting you in certain ways to actually walk through. And I want to leave you with the idea on this particular thing that what's so great about this is that this is like, you are not crazy and you do not have mood swings. You're lunar rhythmic. You are going through 4 different phases. You're looking at this what is this, water bottle from 4 different directions. It's a way of being a well-rounded thinker. This is not crazy. It's not all over the board. You are actually expanding and being open to understanding the world. Makes you a better family member, a better partner, a better parent, better business owner. Start accepting people and looking at more situations, able to find solutions to problems. So, what are we going to go through? So here's just, whoops. Oh, now it wants to stay. Recap. Uterine lining gets flushed out. So after this, you get all the way to the bottom, and then you're back to the period. So this heading down thing is like if you're taking, the uterine lining is breaking down right here. You're not on your period here. The uterine lining is breaking down. And what that means is it's almost like getting your trash ready, and you take it out to the curb. That's this week. And then the trash person comes and takes it away there. Okay? All right, so I had a couple of requests to talk about perimenopause and menopause and all of that. And really, what happens is that, and this also weirdly has worked for a couple of women that were having real fertility issues, like they were wanting to get pregnant and they couldn't. This was the weirdest thing. I mean, it was great, but 2 entirely different workshops, and they each came to me afterwards. They didn't know each other. I mean, again, 2 entirely different places. They came to me after the workshop and said, I'm having trouble getting pregnant. Do you think this will work? I said, I don't have any expertise around that. This is just this system. It can't hurt. There's nothing in here that will hurt you with that. But if you can rest more, if you can play more, if you can have more fun with your partner, not be stressing about it, if you can try to not stress about it so much, if you can do all these things, both of them, a few months later, emailed me and said they got pregnant after doing this thing, every day. So the same with perimenopause and especially perimenopause. Resting is big for that. I mean, my recommendation, I like bioidentical hormones. They're plant-based, and they can, I like them. Some people some people can't use them. It depends on what's going on with your estrogen and progesterone and all that. But if you can use them, again, they're plant-based. I don't see it being any different as taking whatever supplement, because this turns out these bioidentical hormones look exactly under a microscope like your natural hormones. You can't tell the difference. And there are experts around here who more and more doctors are experts in them. So that's just what I say, unless if you continue to suffer through and you're just not finding a solution. But there are different phases. So early menopause is the periods are still regular, but progesterone may be lower. So your periods may come more sporadically. Early menopause is the onset of just periods all over the place. Late menopause transition is the first cycle of more than loss of 60 days. And then finally, you've hit menopause after 12 months of no period. And then after that, postmenopause. I mean, it's sort of like menopause is just like really is like one day. And after that is postmenopause. So it's kind of like an anniversary, like 12 days. Yeah, who knows? We need to have menopause parties. Okay. Now, okay, so Lost Language has a daily practice of cycle tracking. All right, so you can go to my website, 4s4w.com/tools, and you can just download for free a paper chart, just print it out, and there's one for cycling women and one for not. And so the ones not have moon phases on there, and you just track every day. Again, I like manually tracking anyway, even if I had the app going. Manually tracking is getting your body involved in the process. And I think it's really important that if you're out camping somewhere and you don't have Wi-Fi or anything, that you know how to track your cycle. I mean, again, I think this is probably a way that when I've spoken with different indigenous women, they were just like, yeah, this all makes sense. You're just connecting with nature, Okay, so the day to begin tracking is all reproductive females who bleed regularly, even if on a version of the pill, would begin tracking on the first day of your period. That's your own moon cycle. So I'm in favor of contraception that works for you, but it's important to know that when the cycle is altered or manipulated through artificial means, you might have a more dulled or different cyclic experience in sex drive than if you were cycling naturally. So, and I'm not an expert on the energy patterns that result from the varying kinds of contraception, so I can only make my best guesses based on natural cycles. I'm not an expert on those. And I got a chance to talk to, if you know who Christiane Northrup is, I got a chance to talk to her once, and I said, do you know of any charts of when women are on the pill? Like, what does their cycle look like? And she goes, there aren't any charts. And so I was like, okay, so she didn't even know what's really what your cycle is really looking like there. So everybody who does not bleed will track with the actual moon, beginning with the new moon. Okay, pretty easy. Today's day 12, by the way. We're leading up to the full moon. I was really happy that my talk was during this week. Yeah, this is a really fun time. So reproductive age females who bleed super irregularly or not at all do go with the moon, no longer bleeding. And again, trans women who would like to step more fully into their feminine if they're on hormones. And then, like I said, girls like 5 years old track their energy. Yeah, girls don't all of a sudden have a period out of nowhere. Like Mother Nature's volcanoes, the lava within each girl's body has been morphing and shifting since birth, working its way towards this womanly eruption at puberty. Sorry about that. I didn't see that when I was making this. And we already talked about that. Here's what I do think. When my daughter was, she was kind of a late bloomer on this whole thing, but boy, I'll tell you, about 6 months before she actually started her period, she was having hot flashes like crazy. And I thought, oh my gosh, we have them coming in and going out. And I just thought that was so interesting, That made sense to me, but we don't talk about that. All right, so here's another testimonial. I picked up this book at a local bookstore on a whim, not expecting to have it a huge impact on my life. Anyway, so that's really cool. So just to recap, the reasons you need or want to align with your hormones for personal reasons, for your relationships, for parenting, for society, for personal harmony, clarity, confidence, and happiness. I was making a Lisa Mannion note right there. Look at that. Challenges and solution. I meant to put something in there and I didn't do it. Ha, I love that. Okay, so the solution, become an expert at surfing your ocean. Tracking is the way to figure out whether you have a wild ocean or a more mellow ocean. Once you become good at surfing the one you have, you'll be skilled enough to handle it when the conditions change. I mean, you've got this ocean where some days you've got some wild and woolly waves out there, and other days it's, it's like the Gulf of Mexico or something where it's just, pretty chill. So, and think about this for a second. Surfers, whether you've ever gotten out there or not, but you've watched surfers. Surfers, as long as they stay balanced, they can do these big waves. It's all about the balance and being mindful. But they'll get pitched off sometimes, and they'll take a nosedive, and that happens with us. But the key to staying even is staying balanced in your waves. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. And then you'll be your best ally and be better at identifying the areas that need improvement and acting on them. Relationships, romantic, family, or friends. Clarity and consistency and communication improves everything. When you function at your best, you'll attract and be attracted to. the right partner and friends. You'll figure out how to get along with family members who you might otherwise clash with. And then your sectional partner, when you understand your, we already talked about all that. So parenting, happiness and clarity, everything improves, helps your children grow up with stability and your best guidance. I mean, it's a drag to have kids and you're not feeling good or you're really stressed out and you know that you want to be doing better, but, it's better if you could just really know what day you're on. So society, confidence in your status, power, abilities, leadership by example, and most of all, your goodness. All of these things are done with a loving heart and kindness and understanding towards others without sacrificing your values or giving yourself away. So the main idea here is that you really you're tracking every day so that you know which phase you're in and you know which day you're on, and then you know what that means. Knowing what it means is important. Okay, is this a day where when I had my business and this was all happening, all of a sudden, because what was happening is I started making inconsistent decisions, which I didn't really understand. I thought I had a pretty logical mind. I thought I did a good job of putting the information out there and leading and all that. But for instance, here's what happened. This was a day spa, and we had one steam room that was very small. And so we were always trying to work it out with the massage therapist, and I would get together and we're trying to work out how are they sharing this room between the estheticians and the massage therapist. I'd be at the meeting and one day I'd be going, oh, like this is the most serious thing on the planet. We have to get this right. Well, I did want to get it right. We wanted our client experience to be great. But the next meeting I'd be like, we've got other things to worry about. Like I change, and all of a sudden I went, whoa, what is that all about? And nobody complained about that, bless their hearts. But I saw it, and that bothered me a lot. I saw exactly what was happening, and that's when I started tracking. So after that, that's when I would go in and I'd wake up in the morning and go, oh, today's the day to make that important decision because I'm not going to feel like it in a few days. You start planning ahead, and you start trusting what you've experienced, and then start making decisions about that. Or again, a depression kind of thing. It's like, nope, this isn't going to last forever, but how do I want to handle this right now? Because otherwise you think it's going to last forever, Okay. So the organic hormonal rhythm of your female design is at the center of the lost language. It's the compass that has been guiding you all along. Aligning with it is key and the first place to start for doing your part to heal yourself and the world. Aw, isn't that cute? So once you plug into the flow of your womb intelligence and learn how to surf the waves of your monthly body rhythm, everything relaxes as your clarity and awareness become sharper. The rewards that await you are confidence, vital skills, and the knowing that no one else can take your power. This completely changes the way our girls and future generations will view their hormones and female experiences if we carry it through. And so I think this is the last one. The transformation needs to begin where we all begin in the guiding rhythm of the sacred womb. This is the medicine we carry, so the healing must begin with us. Each woman and girl needs to find peace, to be at one with the treasure and wisdom she moves through the world with. This can be done by tracking your cycle each day, knowing what day you're on in the journey, tapping in and aligning with the energy, guidance, and wisdom of the phase, understanding what obstacles get in the way, and having balancing tools ready in advance. When these things are done, and your true power will step forward, and great decisions can be made. And so the day the feminine is highly regarded and her ways listened to and followed within the societal systems and in balance with and supported by the healthy masculine is the day we'll see most of our current societal problems begin to radically shift and fall away, becoming a thing of the past. I like that picture. A friend took it. It's our friend Rico. We had a ceremony going on out there, and he was always supporting all the women. Thank you for attending. Thanks for attending. Let's see. This is how you can reach me if you want to. I wrote 3 children's books. I'm trying to get to the tweens book is next. Okay, so the girls book. So I started to do that, but I realized we needed to start younger than that, about natural rhythm. So I wrote one on the sun and me. It's a kid that just goes through a 24-hour period of the day of resting, building, expressing, and deconstructing. And then the moon in me is a kid going through the monthly rhythm, and the seasons in me is a few kids going through the year. And so those came out last year. Those are on Amazon. And then I do have some books here tonight. I didn't know if anybody would want any, but if I hadn't brought any, then somebody would have wanted one. So anyway, I am giving away free daily tracker and journals. They really go with the book. So if you already have the book, then definitely take one. If you don't have the book, you could take one anyway, but you kind of need the book for it. And if you buy a book, it's normally $24.95. If you buy a book, it's $20 and free daily tracker and journal. I just started a nonprofit as well because I'd like to be able to continue this work. And so I've got ways to donate as well. So that's it. Thank you again. Questions?
So in your example about the spa, and when would be the best week to make that decision?
Make the decision today.
Yeah,
This one.
okay.
Well, this one's just the best. This is for me, this was the best, always. I could always rely on this week to make a good decision that I don't regret later. This one, again, all kinds of wacky things can go on. And then this one, do not send that email. You wait. But this week, and that's what would happen to me. If I was, coming up on this week or I was in this week, it was like, do it now, because I'm not going to, and I trusted that after a while because it is so crazy accurate.
Is that when you're ovulating?
This was ovulation first and then
Yeah.
that week, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Ovulation kicks it off and then that whole week. Yeah, just a super nice, and again, it's kind of a world leader mode, and your partner then can kind of kick back and, not have to be, like this one's, the partner's kind of the protector over here in this, and then you're having fun here. This, your partner can kind of kick back and you're just kind of ruling your world in a way that's just really nice and balanced and feels good. Yeah. And
And the new moon is the start.
new moon is the start.
Yeah.
New moon, first day of the new moon, and then so here's the thing about that. The new moon to new moon is really like 29 and a half days. So it's the orbit is a little under 28 days, but where we see it from the sky, and you might already know this, that it has to move a little bit. So now you're at 29 and a half days. So I also try to, for a while it seemed like a lot of young women were really trying to get into cycling with the moon. And I would tell them, stop it, because it's, unless you're doing 29 and a half days every time, you're going to fail and you're going to feel like you're screwing up. You're not screwing up. It's just that's what we see, that we see the new moon that often. So the postmenopause and all of that, post-hysterectomy, all of that, that chart is that many days in there because you're following the moon. And I think that's what our indigenous ancestors did too. I think they went longer. I don't think they did a 28-day. I think they did like a 29 and a half days, when they were out without artificial lighting, out in nature.
So I have two little daughters, and I guess I'm wondering, with the moon, their connection to the moon, is it like mostly symbolic?
Yeah. Well, it's energetic. So it's really kind of, so for instance, this book here, so this one's really like the circadian rhythm. This one's the solstices and the equinoxes. This one's really about over here. I wish I don't have one of the books. Over here, no, not that one, the children's books. That would be a fun one to start with, though. And again, they're only on Amazon at the moment, but I love that book. And it's really it's more emotional and connection to nature and spirit and that kind of thing. It's very sweet in that sense. So it's really, because we sometimes really just think about, like these two, because these are solar driven, they're more physical. But our emotional bodies and spiritual bodies matter too. They're always going. So I'd say it's more emotional, but it's really about our peace of mind. So on that one, during the new moon, I've got her sort of in a little relaxed meditative state. And then, out running and playing here. And what is she doing that one? And then anyway, it works out pretty well. So you might start there. How old are your kids?
2 and 4.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that's a good time to do it. And then by the time, I would say start at 5 as far as really but you could just ask them anytime. I mean, you could just start from the beginning. But that would be a cheap book to get, to start them with. Yeah. Anybody else?
What an eye opener.
Oh, good. Well, you know, it's funny. I'm so used to it now that I think I'm not going to be telling anybody anything new. But then I look back through all the stuff and I'm thinking, this system, it's just incredibly accurate. That's all I can say. And the only way you can know that for sure is to track, is to actually track, because the act of tracking, actually, all of a sudden, you start feeling the patterns just by what you're noticing, what you're mindful about. Otherwise, if you don't track every day, you'll start forgetting and you start looking for everything to be the same again. You know, just really even across the board that way. And it's fun to actually have sort of these different things happening. Like, I love it. Louise is my pal from 35 years, and she had been doing something similar before I put this out. And she actually did some of the, can you see this for a second? Louise did some of the artwork in here. She did. So anyway, yeah, the book is also
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I had artists from all over the world. Oops, where'd it go? Oh, here we go. Louise did this one. So this has got the moon phases, but it's also got the different days. I also, one of the things I talk about is I have different muses go through so I've got the lounging queen, and then the visionary, and then the artist in this week. And then we've got the builder, who is Venus the builder, basically popping up in here, and then the fun date, and then the lover. And then for ovulation, it's the goddess, because there's just nothing, I mean, the goddess is half earth, half spirit, right? And so what you've got there is, this is when you've got, with ovulation, you've got the most primal thing ever happening with an egg being released, right? But it's also the most spiritual thing that can happen. It's creation. And whether it's children or it's you're creating a project or whatever it is, I mean, this is perfect earth-spirit alignment right here. So it's so fabulous. So it's not a trendy kind of goddess thing. I mean it, right? That's who you are in this spot. Then I've got the wise woman. So that's the one that comes down and she's hanging out, relaxing, and it's exactly opposite of the visionary. So the visionary is the second one in here, and the wise woman, they're kind of two different things. One of the things Cynthia saw when we were in a workshop, she just said, because it was, we were talking equinoxes and solstices and stuff, but what she saw that was a little bit bigger was that both of these are waiting phases, and both of these are action phases. So, and because winter and summer are opposites, and these two are opposites, but you can use them to come up with solutions as well. You can kind of look to the opposite week to actually help you sort of come up with some solutions.
Well, and if you get more particular and the longer you do it, you can actually see the difference in the middle of the week, or the beginnings, or the end of the week when you start in the next.
Yeah.
It really makes a difference.
It really makes a difference. Louise and I have we've been talking about this for so long, because when I first started writing this book, she was already post-menopause, but she was always tracking by the moon. She wasn't doing the system at the time, but she was always tracking by the moon.
Right.
So
And
she
I
had a
start
lot.
with the full moon.
But she's opposite.
I'm
So-
a paradox, what can I tell you?
Yeah.
But, I do have a question. So, when you work with couples, have you noticed any, or maybe even roommates or people who live together, whether they start cycling their energies similarly after a while?
Well, there's been a lot of studies on that, and it's really hard. It's like whether women start cycling together. At some point, first of all, I think it would be natural for the energies to start swirling around with each other, because that's kind of what we're doing with the natural rhythms. It's a great question. As far as even bleeding together, I'm not sure that that's the question you're really answering, but to
Well,
answer.
that and about couples, whether their
Yeah.
energy.
Oh, the energies of the
Also.
couples. Well, let me talk about the bleeding one for a second.
Yeah.
That one is something that's been talked about a lot. But at some point, my thought is that, I mean, they just haven't been able to, nobody's been able to actually prove that so much. And the thing is that it goes back to that 29 and a half day thing. At some point, you're all gonna end up maybe in the same spot, but that may be temporary. Maybe this month, but not for another bunch of months or something. But as far as a couple, well, I don't know, but I would say that if you've got one grumpy person, the other one's gonna start getting grumpy too, maybe. Unless you're following this thing and then you start knowing how to actually communicate well, actually how to address each other. And then I think that once everybody's getting in sync with this women's rhythm, because there's no mystery to it, this is a predictable pattern that keeps happening, I think then men will start seeing their own patterns a little bit better. And I do think that, what I wanted to say about the trans thing or whatever is that I do think that there are biological females, but I also think there are biological, there's the biological feminine. You might be looking at, let's say we've known, like you've got a gay couple, two men, and one of them is very feminine. I think that guy is more lunar rhythmic. I just think that there's something, I don't think that's weird or unusual. I mean, I think that we all have these different energies that can happen. So it doesn't have to always be a womb situation, but the womb situation rules. I mean, that's the blueprint, that's the, but we all have a lot of variations on our womb situations. So, but I think that there's something in this for pretty much everybody if they're willing to take a look at it and actually track. And if they're actually okay with jumping into the feminine rhythm and being okay with that.
I'm not sure what my question is, but let me just try and figure it out. For postmenopausal women, we can be judged as not as energetic or not as cool as we once were, or something like that. Is the
Excuse me.
Are the hormonal levels, like that chart that you have, are they still going on the same?
No.
Or
No, they're still
lower?
Lower.
Or okay, so if they're lower, that is
Well,
like
Let me
we're
throw
milder or something?
milder. Well, here's the thing: is they're not as big because progesterone is just not needed to be all up there to wait
Right,
for a
'cause
baby.
there's no eggs anymore.
There's no eggs
Okay.
anymore.
Yeah.
So none of that big stuff has to happen, but your body's still putting. It's
So
just
it's
everything's just
still-
more mellow. Here's what's weird about so tracking by the moon. First of all, the thing that I got excited about is I had this. There were two different older women. One was Grandma Aggie of the 13 indigenous grandmothers, who when she was looking at it, she said, "Oh yeah, I totally still have a rhythm. I still, she feels that." Another woman was a friend of mine, a bunch of friends' mom, and she was in her 80s at the time. She used to be a writer, a television writer and stuff. She heard I was writing at the time I was writing the book, and she said she got a hold of me and she said, "Send it to me." She didn't know what I was really writing about. She just heard I was writing a book, and she was a writer. So I sent it to her, being totally afraid that because she was a good writer, and she contacted me immediately, and she said, "I knew I still had a rhythm. I knew it. I feel it, and you get this out there because I feel it, and I knew it, and I've said it to other people at times, and they just thought I was crazy." So here's what's interesting about it is that it's kind of, you look back and this one's kind of a backwards way. What'll happen is that something will happen for you, a situation. And then all of a sudden you look back to, wait a second, where was the moon on that day? What was the phase? And it's like, oh my gosh, I should have been paying attention to that because that landed right like in this week or something. When that happens over and over, sometimes it's a looking back thing, but I had one of my biggest, one of my hardest somebody who had been very hard to convince to like this system. And she just became a fanatic about it because she was already postmenopause, and she just said, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but this actually works. And so, again, it's kind of a looking back thing a lot of the time that I've noticed.
Or you'll start feeling something and go, why am I, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's a moon,
Yeah.
or whatever.
And I know
coming
that,
up.
yeah, and it sounds like that's hogwash or something, but when you are tracking, because we do have these chemicals in us. I mean, if you're drinking coffee one day and tequila the next, or, you know, whatever, these chemicals affect how we feel. So these are chemicals within us that are triggering different actions within our body. And if we just, again, we get in there and just like act like it's an ocean, and we're going to get in there and surf these waves, it's a lot more fun, you know. And it's like, wow, okay, and you just feel a little more relaxed and less stressed, or, you know.